When I sold the business for $110 million, literally overnight, all of my money problems went away. When I moved to Silicon Valley, I had $1,600 in my bank account, $30,000 in debt. Anyone on the planet that manages money would talk to me. So I went on this 6-month journey where I interviewed the 15 best wealth managers on the planet.
Because I want to give you an idea I've been having recently, right?
You want to go deep on this? Because I can
let's go deep
masterclass.
So tell me how the 0.1% invests.
Very differently than the average person. If we walk away, personal net worth of at least $5 million, 24 years old, we were like, that's more money than we can ever imagine. So like, we're good.
Little did you know.
Yeah. My primary question in life was, how do I make money? And I think that's a really good question when you don't have any money. If you just look at the math, getting a basic job and like working 9 to 5, the math just doesn't add up. You're not able to achieve the lifestyle that you want to achieve. We were able to sell 6 figures of courses while I was in college.
Did you just say 6 figures in courses while in college?
People who know me, they know me as this guy who sold a company for $110 million. People don't know, I've been in this make money online game for a very long time.
But then I've got a question for you, right? So you know how you said you wanted to try living abroad? Yep. America's so big, so why not just move from state to state? Because if they're different in the way they look and the way they feel and stuff, then why go completely across the world? Why not just stay in America?
So 2 things. One, I would say I genuinely think that America is not a great place right now. Like from a global standpoint, you look at like lifespan, it's literally declining year over year. Like it's actually markedly getting worse. Safety, cost of living, all of that is just sort of gone off the rails a bit. So I just feel like America will get its feet back under it, but like right now it's going through a moment in history where it's like not a great place to be.
But then playing devil's advocate as well, London's just as bad in terms of safety, living costs through the roof. More than it's ever been. So there's that as well.
So interestingly, when we moved to London just over a year ago, London was about half the cost of New York City.
Oh, really?
And almost twice as safe.
Really?
So I looked at like all the stats, all the data, and I was like, oh, so literally I can go to London. Roughly the same population as New York City. And pay half as much and be twice as safe. And I get to live abroad. Sounds like a sweet deal to me.
But I feel like sometimes you can't always go by stats online or something like that because they never tell you the factual or the reality of the situation and stuff like that. It's only documented crime that they'd say in the...
You can, but like that, you could apply that same argument to New York. I would say that was markedly true when we moved here, that it was half the cost, twice as safe. Now, I was just looking at the stats last week and I was shocked. London's become a lot more expensive faster than New York City has. London is still cheaper than New York City, and you really feel it. Like I got a $12 cappuccino last time I was in New York.
That's mental.
I don't think you can buy a $12 cappuccino in London. Maybe at like the Rosewood or something, but not like regular places. But London is now more dangerous than New York City. It's like just crossed the edge where it's actually more dangerous to be in London than it is in New York City. So to me, I felt like a lot of cities got it wrong during COVID. Like I was in San Francisco and all of a sudden the crime rate was unbelievable, riots in the streets and everything. And then you had a chance to recover. And so when I looked at London, I was like, okay, it's not great, but it's twice as safe as New York City. It's like half the cost. A year later, it's gotten much more expensive and much more dangerous. And I don't have to live here. My job isn't tied to this like city, this country. That's why we're leaving in a month. I looked at the stats and I'm like, it's just actually sort of on that downward spiral. And I have the flexibility and freedom to not deal with that downward spiral.
So do you still work now or are you on travel mode, stuff like that?
I lose money every month doing content for fun. So, I mean, like this month we made $50, I think, on like AdSense, and that's my whole income from content. And mind you, I've got 3 guys working for me. So like... They're not making $50 a month. Like, you just do the math. I don't do any activities that are designed to earn me income. My earning phase of life is basically done, and my entire lifestyle, multiple homes, shopping, the world, everything is supported by investment income.
Okay, so I was gonna say there are investment incomes that support your lifestyle stuff as well.
And that's like, for me, that is true freedom. I did the whole passive income thing when I was 24. I was up to $1,000 a day. I had this like lifestyle business. And then I watched it go away overnight. And what that taught me was if you're relying on business income to support your lifestyle, you still have to make the sales calls. You still have to deal with the customers, and that can go away. If you actually have true, like a robust portfolio of assets that generate enough income, that's real freedom. I can sleep in all day. I don't have to make any meetings. I don't have to do anything. Lifestyle's covered. That's like, I can live where I want, do what I want.
So you sold your previous business, yeah? When did you sell it?
So in 2021, we sold to a public company.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sold to a public company. So you've basically been away from business for 3 years as of now.
After the acquisition, they asked me to stay on and run it.
Yeah.
So I ran it for 2 years. They asked me to stay for 3 years, but I left after 2.
Yeah.
And now haven't been working for the last 2 years, basically.
Yeah. So I actually don't know too much. Obviously, I've seen your content. I love your content as well. But in terms of actually diving deep into what you actually started and done, sold, etc., I don't know too much. So what did you actually start?
Yeah. I'll give you like the short biography so I catch up to speed on.
Okay, go on.
So I mentioned like grew up in a poor household, family divorced, went to live with my mom down in South Carolina, and early on realized that sort of if you just look at the math of like how are we going to break out of our situation from a poverty standpoint, getting a basic job and like working 9 to 5, the math just doesn't add up. It's very simple math, and you're not going to be able to achieve the lifestyle that you want to achieve probably on the traditional path. So I was like, okay, I need to find a way to get out of this. And I started looking to entrepreneurship. I was very early, like, and I kind of laugh now because you see all the like internet hustlers. Like I was that kid like 20 years ago. So I launched my first online business.
Yeah, which was?
It was selling RuneScape gold on eBay. So I was using bots to get gold. I launched that in 2001.
Yeah.
So that was like my first. I made $1,000 in a week. All my accounts got banned, but I was like, I made money on the internet when I was 12 years old in 2001.
So I remember playing RuneScape, but not too. I wasn't playing too much, right? So I remember you could mine gold or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So what was it you was doing? You was basically having bots to mine gold on your own accounts and then selling it on.
Yeah. So the trick about mining gold is that mining gold was inefficient.
Yeah.
So what you wanted to do is you actually wanted to collect feathers. I think you collected them from chickens. So
I remember that. Yeah.
So I built a bot that would essentially play the game for me.
Yeah.
And it would go mine the feathers from the chickens because that was like the highest gold per hour. And you could sell them at the shop. So it'd go collect it, fill your inventory, go sell them at the shop, back and forth. And it would do that 24/7. So I had it running on like 5 different accounts at once from the same IP address. And I got a bunch of gold. And then I would go on eBay and sell it. And I think it was like...
Sell the accounts?
The gold.
Okay.
So you could actually... It was really sketchy. You would like sell the gold on eBay. And then obviously there's no way to like guarantee. So you have to like... It's an honor system. You then go like meet the guy somewhere in the game and you like give them $1 million gold. Yeah. So I was like running all this while I was in middle school, like, and just making money because I only wanted to do it because I wanted a new gaming PC because I was a gamer.
Yeah.
So we ran that, and then I got banned after like a week, but I made enough to buy the gaming PC, and I was like, that was sick. Like I just made more in a week than my mom or my stepdad make in like a couple weeks, and I'm like playing video games. Like this is insane.
Did you make the bot?
I did.
How old do you say?
It's 12.
How does a 12-year-old make a bot? I don't know. I'm 27 right now, and I don't know the first thing about making a bot.
Yeah.
And you've done it at 12 years old.
So
and the best part of it as well is you done it in a day and age where internet was brand spanking new.
Yeah.
I think people have 3 megabytes a second download speed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I want to give a caveat to this story, which is people hear this story and they'll be like, oh, we're going to write off the rest of Michia's achievements because he was making bots at 12 years old. I was not born making bots. I had to Google it, learn how to do it, figure it out. And I did it because I wanted something. Mm-hmm. The same way that no one is born knowing how to do these things. So I hear this excuse a lot of like, you know how to make bots, so of course you were successful later. Like, that's so dumb. I Googled it, is the short answer. And I didn't actually write the language for playing RuneScape. So essentially there was a program that someone made to make bots for RuneScape. Mm-hmm. I think I bought it for like $20. And then within that, you could then program your bot. So like someone else had done a lot of the heavy lifting, and I just used their tools to make my custom feather mining bot. And then I ran that. But I had to learn it because I wanted something. I Googled it. I like self-studied. And yeah, it was way harder back then. It's 2001. Like now you have YouTube and everything else. So the excuses around like this just drive me nuts.
So you at 12 years old started this business for, well, would you call it business?
Yeah. I would call it an internet hustle.
Okay.
Like that's subjectively what it was.
Yeah.
There was no business. There was no registration. There was no employees. I was just a kid who wanted to make some money online.
You started this internet hustle then at 12 years old. You got your gaming PC.
Yeah.
Did you stop that internet hustle at that point because you got what you wanted now? Or...
Yeah. Like, which is like not the like inspiring podcast where you want to be like, after that, I was like, I'm going to go play video games. And I kind of actually, I think like forgot about that a little bit because I was happy I was playing video games. I was going through life. And then I started actually, the next like money I earned, because it was a long period, was I was selling cameras at Circuit City, which is like this this electronics store in America, for $7.25 an hour. So I would work a week and I'd make less than I made at the Escape.
Yeah.
So I was like, this sucks.
And how old was that, you said?
17 years old.
17 years old. Okay, so that's 5 years on.
Yep. Yeah. So then I quit that and started a course business.
But just a quick one, just on that job there.
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you in the moment, damn, 5 years ago I was making $1,000 a week and now I'm making X amount, way less than that? Did you ever see it like that? Or was it just, I'm making money? It's not as much as RuneScape, but yeah, it will do.
I think it was like, this is what everyone's telling me to do. Like, you got to go get a job and like get experience. And like, so I was trying to just do the things that I was supposed to do. And I didn't last very long. I think I was only there for a few months. So there was no like, there was a feeling that something was off when I was selling cameras for $7.25 an hour. And after tax, it's like $4 an hour. But I don't know that I was like, this is the RuneScape thing was way more. I was just like, I got to get out of here. And I think I can make more money myself than what they're paying me. That was probably the big aha moment for me. It's just like, I know how to make money, certainly better than this. I'm going to go try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So then I left.
Damn. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Everyone starts somewhere, and in your case, started from RuneScape and then
yeah.
Stuff.
I mean, I think the thing is like, everybody knows me now. Not everybody, but like people who know me online or watch my content, they know me as this guy who sold a company for $110 million. I think the thing that like people either don't know or lose sight of is like, I've been in this make money online game for a very long time. Like, I think I made my first $1,000 in 2001. Now you have like someone like an Iman Ghazi. I'm pretty sure he was like 1 year old when I was like making money online. So I've been in this game for a long time. I had a course business in 2007. So when people talk about selling courses, like, dude, I was doing that 17 years ago. Started an SMMA when I was 21. That was in 2011. Again, like, I've been around this stuff for a long time.
How did you get so early into these games? Because it's only now where we're hearing and seeing a lot of people make courses.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my perspective on courses actually changed within the last year or two, right? Because before, anyone who was selling a course, I was like, they're just in it for a quick buck. They're just, you know, the typical word you would hear is scammer,
yep.
right?
Yep.
Now my perspective has changed. Like, okay, courses are actually beneficial. Yep. I've actually paid someone for a course as well. Yep. Paid him £3,000, which roughly, I don't know, $4,500, something like that. And I understand that people who are making these courses legitimately and have experience in what they're doing is completely fine and it's acceptable. For example, me, I've done this podcast for 5 years now. If I turn around and do a podcasting course,
yep,
I have the credibility. I think I do have the credibility to do so because I've been making podcasts for 5 years. I know everything about it.
Yep.
But yeah, what made you want to get into courses in the first place? You said 2007?
2007.
2007 is when, was Facebook out? I think it was out then.
Facebook was out.
Yeah.
We sold a lot of the course through Facebook, actually. So
yeah.
Facebook ads, like we were very early on Facebook ads and Google Display Network. The reason I wanted to sell a course was the like, there were a couple of distinctions. One, when I was 17, I went super deep on business. I just decided, like, I'm not selling cameras for $7.25 an hour. I'm going to figure this area of my life out, which is business, wealth, and ultimately I want to achieve financial independence. What I realized in that journey was, one, to achieve wealth, you have to find a way to deliver value that doesn't directly involve your time. If you're just trading your time for money, even if it's a very high rate, like, you're actually not wealthy. You could have a lot of money, but you're not wealthy because you're still just like trading your time for money. And the courses at the time was one of the few ways to do that I was able to process and understand. Because if you buy my course, like the whole thing's automated. It was actually back when we were selling physical courses. So if you bought my stuff, you'd get 5 DVDs and a handbook delivered to your house.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like, this is a real, like, this is old school business.
Yeah.
Even though you bought it online, it had like a long page sales letter. And the business, the course was self-defense. So I grew up basically good at 2 things, computers and martial arts. So I was a world champion martial artist in karate, taekwondo, kung fu, competed in the Junior Olympics in judo. So I was like, I can do martial arts and I can make websites. What if I like try to combine those 2?
So long story short, don't fuck with you.
Well, I'm an old rusty man now, but yeah. I've had some kickboxing fights, Muay Thai fights. Like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me make a course because that's all I know how to do. I don't have like real world skills. And I did, and it worked well. Like we were able to sell 6 figures of courses while I was in college, and I was going to school full time. So that was that business that allowed me to sort of disconnect my time from earning money.
Did you just say 6 figures in courses while in college?
Yeah. Okay. But I didn't know there were still a lot of lessons in me that hadn't like settled in yet. I'd only studied how do I build a business, how do I make money.
Yeah.
So when I graduated college, I was still broke, and the reason was I didn't grow up with money lessons. I didn't know that like you make money, you save it, you invest it, you like. So I'd make money, I'd spend money. Because that's what I thought you did. Like, you made money to spend money. So
yeah.
I bought 9 cars while I was in college. I ran the car club. Like, I was the car guy, and it was super cool.
What cars did you have?
So, I was into JDM cars. I was a Fast and Furious kid.
Okay, yeah.
So, I had a Nissan 240SX, S13. I had 2 of those. One was had an engine from what's called a Sylvia, RB20.
Yep.
One had a Skyline engine.
What, RB26?
RB25.
Okay, yeah.
With a massive turbo, fully built coilovers. That was doing about 500 wheel horsepower.
Yep.
In a car that weighs 2,600 pounds. You could be on the highway and you could do burnouts.
Yeah.
And I was 19 years old when I got that. So that was the sickest car.
Did you build these cars or did you buy them?
I bought them.
Okay.
A lot of them, like, so the S13 with the RB25, I only had that car for about 6 months, and I probably spent $7 or $8 like doing custom stuff to it because everything on that car was custom: the engine, the transmission,
everything. Yeah.
So I was always like tinkering and like upgrading them and changing them, but I wasn't building them from scratch because that's a much longer process.
Yeah.
And like I was still going to school full time and running this business. So like the idea of also running like an auto shop was a bit
more daunting.
Yeah.
But that's mad. You bought that many cars and everything. So you're a proper petrol head as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I used to literally think I only made money to buy cars. It was like sort of like.
I'll tell you an interesting story. Right, this is a bit sidetracked from what you just said there. So back in 2019, I had the option to buy one of 2 cars. Yeah, it was either get a C63, the 4-liter V8 one, or. And it's going to bum me for even saying it, or an R34 Skyline. And R34 Skylines, GTR, were at the time about £27,000, £30,000. And then, I didn't know this was going to happen.
Yeah.
US market opened up.
Yep, 25-year import rule.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And then now, you try and find the same car, minimum £150,000.
Dude, I know, because I'm moving to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I'm torn between, like, should I buy... Like, I can buy a sick Porsche GT3 RS or a Ferrari F8 Spider or a 20-year-old R34 GTR for the same price. But it's the same price. And like, I've driven 20-year-old JDM cars.
Yeah.
They feel like 20-year-old JDM cars. They don't feel like a brand new Porsche.
But it's the experience though you get with that manual and you bought me through. I remember watching a video on it. The first time I was already in love with R34s before, but the first time I understood what they could do in terms of power-wise, it was a grey GTR, I think it was in Japan maybe, and it was just sending it through tunnels. I think it was like 1,000 horsepower, and the way that thing drove and the way the guy was shifting it, the noise that it had a screamer pipe on it as well. Bro, the way that sounded, I was like, nah, I need one. So it's still my goal. I'm going to get one in my life at some point. It just depends when. Are they expensive in Japan? Because in Japan, like, they're way more common than you get them here in the UK or America.
Yeah. So what's happened is because they're now able to be imported into the US, they're all US priced.
Okay.
Because
same with UK then.
Every collector in Japan said, "Oh, my Skyline just 5x'd in value
overnight."
So I've been looking at the market. They're all like 120, 150 grand maybe.
Yeah.
There is one really cool one, which is this. It's called Built by Legends.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen this.
I feel like I have.
So there's Minds, which is like the supercar tuning shop that like built the best R34s and R32s and R33s. They partnered with them and built these like. Have you seen a Singer Porsche?
Yeah.
So it's a Singer Porsche, but of a Skyline, basically. Like, let's rip it down to the very chassis, redo everything, and they're like 700 grand for an R34. But it's like it like drives like a brand new car.
There's one guy I saw a video of it in Australia. He's got R34, but everything underneath, chassis, engine, gearbox, all from an R35.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And it's midnight purple, which looks sick.
Yeah.
And there was a video of it driving. When your brain doesn't comprehend when you're hearing a dual clutch gear change in an R34, you're just like, how does this even make sense?
Yeah.
But going back to the point, we digress from the cars. Going back to the point, you had these 9 cars.
Yep.
At that age, 6-figure income, so you're spending it all. So then what happened from that point?
So when I graduated college, I said, I don't want to be the self-defense guy. Like, that was a sort of chapter in my life. I wanted to close that. Also, I had made so many mistakes building the business that I was like, if I knew today what I knew when I started that business, I would change everything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't really feel like spending another 4 years rebuilding my whole funnel, my product, everything to be better. Mm-hmm. And the biggest takeaway there, just as like a little like nugget that I took way too long to learn, was my product was $197 or $297. After, if you bought the full thing, which was $297, after that I had nothing left to sell you. And that was a bad business, because all good businesses have things that they can repeatedly sell their customers or continue to sell them. So like, this isn't a good example, but it would have been a $47 ebook, then a $200 handbook, then the $10,000 weekend seminar, then the $50,000. Like, that's a good business. But when $297, one and done, I have nothing left to sell you, I cannot spend more than $297 to acquire customers. It was a bad business. So I said, let me start a better business. And this was way before SMMA was cool, but I said, I'm going to start like a marketing agency. And so I started a marketing agency. It was less on the social media side, because that was actually not that big back then. But we did kind of like 2 styles of business. So one was we would do consulting for companies that wanted to learn how to run Facebook ads, Google display ads, or rank for SEO. So that was like one half of the business. The other half was we would do that for ourselves internally. And I owned a few different properties, like motorcycle insurance, helper.com, insurance, samurai.com, and all these like various.
Oh, so when you're saying properties, you mean the domains?
Domains.
Okay.
But they were websites.
Yeah.
And I would build out very robust websites, and they would rank for those keywords. So if there was one point in like 2014, if you had Googled car insurance in the US, and it was based on the city you were living in, but of about 3,000 cities in the US, I would have been in the top 3 results for the word car insurance. And what you would do is you'd land on my webpage, where you would have different companies that you could get quotes from. And if you got a quote from any of those companies, I would get paid. So it's kind of like an affiliate deal, but it was much deeper in that we had a call center. You could call and like they would answer, hey, thanks for calling Insurance Samurai. How can we help you?
So it's exactly how you would get Go Compare now in the UK, which is a website comparison website basically.
Yeah. So I was building that in 2011.
How old were you at the time as well? 2011.
I was 21.
21. Okay.
So I was building that. Grew that to basically $1,000 a day peak.
Every day?
Not every day. So that would be like the peak that we would do. And I would say on a low side, we might do $350, $400 a day, but completely passive. Like I wasn't doing a thing to earn that. And I spent 2 months in Thailand, kickboxing, lived in Japan for a month, was in China, was in India, like was living the digital nomad dream. And I thought I had achieved financial freedom. Like I was like, I'm done, boxes checked, the income's coming in. And I had this dashboard where I was obsessed of refreshing it.
Yeah.
It was live.
That's like me with YouTube Studio.
Yeah. I deleted that because it's so unhealthy.
Yeah. I did at one point as well, and then I downloaded it again. Now, mental health is mad.
It's really bad. But I would refresh this dashboard because it would show me real time how much I'd made that day. So, I'd wake up, be grabbing coffee like in Bangkok, and like, oh, I've already made $124. And I'd be like, sick, this coffee's like $1. Yeah. And I'd feel so cool. Like, oh, I'm here in Bangkok making all this money.
Like you're financially free.
And then one day I opened it up and it was 0. And I kept refreshing and it was 0. And I kept refreshing and it was 0. And I knew something was wrong because I was like, we have too many websites to be at 0 this late in the day. And Google had made an algorithm change.
Yep.
All of our sites had stopped ranking. And I went to $0 a day overnight, spent months trying to get it back and never did. And so that was the big wake-up call to say, one, passive income is not the answer. There's no such thing as passive income. There's like temporary income that you have to keep maintaining to sustain. And I've got to do something different. This like internet hustling stuff is not the way to actually achieve real wealth. Mm-hmm. And for me, wealth is freedom. And that's what I really wanted, not like a number figure in the bank account.
So out of all those businesses, what was the most popular one there?
Define most popular.
Most customers.
Most customers. So largest market would have been car insurance. We did home insurance, motorcycle insurance, life insurance, but car insurance was the highest volume. And so I think at the time, you would make a little more on a life insurance lead than a car insurance lead because it's like a bigger ticket item. But we had a lot more volume on the car insurance.
You're collecting data at the same time?
Not like in a creepy, like modern day Facebook or Google thing. You would just land on our website and you could either fill out a form to get a quote or you could call our call center. That was the business. What really made it work was the rankings on Google.
Okay. So, because what I'm trying to understand is at the point where it's gone zero,
yep.
Did you have any idea of businesses like that can be sold at some point?
So there was a company in North Carolina that was doing something similar to what we were doing. And I think they were not selling, but they were acquiring companies. But I didn't go to business school. I didn't have any business mentors. So if I go back to like 24-year-old Michia bouncing around the world, building these like websites, he actually doesn't know what he's doing in sort of like the wealth journey. What I knew was how to build websites, how to rank for keywords. And that is maybe the equivalent today of like someone who knows high income skills. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you're going to actually know how to build wealth.
Yeah.
Like there's a very specific, there are laws and frameworks of building wealth that are different than high income skills. High income skills is like one of the puzzle pieces. It doesn't mean that you can actually achieve the ultimate outcome, which is becoming wealthy, financially independent. So I only had the like high income skills. I don't think I even knew that businesses were really like bought and sold because I wouldn't have known anyone that did that at that time.
Yeah. It's just you yourself at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I was living in South Carolina before I started the businesses. So like I didn't have that circle. I didn't grow like if you grew up rich and your dad like started a business and sold it, like you grew up with a very different set of lessons than I did. So I just didn't have those lessons. So like 24-year-old Michia didn't know what he was doing. He just had some high income skills.
So what did you do when it went down to zero?
Yep.
You weren't earning anything by the day.
Yeah.
What did you do at that point?
So my biggest I think the thing that's really made a big difference in my life in general, and anyone who wants to achieve wealth needs to do, is you need to get around people that are already achieving the thing that you want to achieve. And so I said, I need to take a step back here and say, why is it that I've been an entrepreneur for 7 years, I've made 6 figures multiple times, but I'm still broke. I have almost nothing to show for it. And yet I feel like I have all the right skills. And so I took a step back and said, well, let's look at the playing field. I'm 24. Who are the 24-year-olds out there who are getting wealthy? How are they doing it? And like that sounds so stupid that I'd never asked that before, but I was just like so caught up in this internet business like hustle,
trying to do your thing.
Yeah. And so I looked and I said, well, there's a real clear path here. People are building businesses that they own equity value in, that they can sell for a large amount of money, and many of them are doing it in Silicon Valley. At the time, Silicon Valley was the place to go if you wanted to, in my mind, make a lot of money early on. And so I packed up a bag, flew to Silicon Valley, flew to San Francisco, and I didn't even have like a plan. I still had my apartment back in South Carolina. I still had my BMW back in South Carolina. So I was like, parked it, was in Silicon Valley for 3 months because I wasn't sure if it was going to work out. After 3 months, I was like, okay, this is the place to be. Flew back, sold all my stuff, and really moved to Silicon Valley. And this is another one of those things where it's like, I get so frustrated by people who are like, but you grew up programming RuneScape, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know businesses could be sold. I didn't know about revenue multiples. If you had said like basic Silicon Valley terms, like I wouldn't have known what SaaS was, what an MVP, minimum viable product was, customer acquisition cost, CAC, LTV, lifetime value. Like I wouldn't have known any of that stuff. I had literally just moved there and I said, I don't know anything, but these people do. let me hang out with them, let me figure it out, and then I will try to do what they're doing because it's working for them, and what I'm doing is not working. Like, it was that simple, and the rest is sort of history.
But how'd you even get in the room with them people there?
So
because there's one thing saying I'm going to move to this place because I know these people are there and they can help me, but getting in the room with them and picking their brain and trying to understand certain attributes towards business and all that sort of stuff, it's a completely different, separate conversation.
Yeah. There's, in anything you want to do, there will be private rooms that you don't get into until you reach a certain level of success. There will be people that you don't get to meet unless by chance, unless you reach a certain level of success, because they're sort of hanging out with that crowd. But there's always like levels down from that. Mm-hmm. So if you look at maybe, let's say, like the room where Mark Zuckerberg hangs out with other like multi-billionaire CEOs, you're not getting into that room, at least not initially. I've been in those rooms since then, but like way, way, way into my journey.
Yeah.
But if you take that from like the very fundamental principles down to what's like a level 1 person on that journey, it's like the guy trying to figure out how to get his first round of funding. And you can probably get into that room, and he probably knows a little bit more than you because you're like level 0. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Silicon Valley, and I would go to like the events that were public, that were free. I would go to the meetups, and there's not amazing people in those rooms generally, every now and then, but you start to immerse, and then oftentimes what you'll see is like the level 1 person might know a few level 2s. So they might introduce you to a level 2 person at first, and you sort of like
go up the
ladder. And eventually, and I was very systematic about this, I would say, hey, I'm working on this thing. You know, I'm looking to start a startup. Do you know anyone else that I should meet while I'm here in San Francisco or whatever? And they'll introduce you to 1 or 2 people. And I just did that until, you know, the next thing you know, you do have like billionaire mentors that are pouring into you just by asking to go 1 level up. What you don't want to do is ask a level 1 person, even if they know the billionaire, like they're gonna be like, why would I introduce you? But they'll introduce you to a level 2 person. And then like level 2 to level 3. And so I did that. And people are really actually quite willing to help as long as you are someone who's humble, wants to learn, and is putting in the effort. And I think the third one is the one that most people miss, because I get a lot of DMs around this. People will say, hey, like, can you help me? Can you grab coffee? And I'll be like, cool, like, what are you working on? I'd love to help. And they're like, well, I haven't started. I'm like, dude, like, come on, like, why don't you start and then talk to me about problems you're actually facing?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to play imaginary scenarios where you haven't started anything.
You got nothing for me to fall back on. Not fall back on, what's the word? I know exactly what you're saying. There's nothing for you to, you know, analyze, shall I say, and figure out the problems and all that sort of stuff. It's like playing like Tea Party as a kid. Like how can I like talk to you about your sales problems if you're not even selling anything? Like I can be like, well, I think these are the objections that you might face later in the future, but
that's like such a waste of a conversation.
Yeah,
I'd rather you say, hey, I called 100 people, 1 bought, 5 almost bought but didn't, and here's what they all said. And I'd be like, oh, cool, now we have a problem we can work on.
I think a lot of people nowadays, and I was having this conversation with someone I'd done a podcast with last week, a lot of people don't want it bad enough nowadays. Yeah. And there's a lot of laziness going around in the world right now as well. Even someone who was on my team, and whether I keep spitting a podcast or not, they're no longer with me purely because of this reason.
Yeah.
They're with my team, but they also do other client work and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, he had a conversation with me saying, you know, how can I achieve better? How can I do more, etc. and stuff like that. And I asked him what's he doing. He goes, I do your work, i.e. me, and he does 2 other clients. Yep. And then I thought, okay, cool, there's more to this. Let me ask him about his routine. He goes, yeah, I wake up in the afternoon, 1 p.m, 2 p.m. There and then in my head, I was like, okay, I already know what this is.
Yep.
He does 2 or 3 hours work on a daily basis, and then he's stressed out, and he's relying on my income, as in my, his wages from me, to get by, and he's comfortable. And then I thought to myself, people don't want it bad enough. They want to say they want success, they want to do this, they want to do that, but they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, I have I would disagree with you on one point, which is I don't think that people are inherently lazy. I think that they don't believe that if they put in the extra effort, they will see the reward. So I actually think it's a self-doubt problem.
Okay.
I think if I don't know who this guy is, but I believe anyone, if they showed up early, put in the work, stayed late, and that would lead to them achieving all the success and everything that they wanted, they would do that. But many people have been so disheartened by, I did show up early, I did stay late, and my life still sucks. I didn't get the results, and so I'm just not going to try it all. And so I think that is, I would say they lack self-belief and they lack patience, because you can't show up for 6 months and expect the rewards.
Yeah.
Like I was showing up, again, I've been doing this since 2001. I was trying to figure out this wealth and money thing for a really long time, and I just didn't give up. And that is one of the weird things about Silicon Valley that really bothered me when I first got there was most of the successful entrepreneurs are just rich kids. They just have a $40 million trust fund to fall back on. And I thought they were succeeding because of the connections at first. And that's part of it for sure. Like, their dad can introduce them to this person and so on. But one of the things that the rich kid does differently as well is they are willing to just fail and fail and fail and fail and fail because they have a safety net.
Yeah, they can afford to fail.
They can afford to fail. And it feels a lot more painful to fail when you don't have much of a safety net. And like for me, I had to be that 24. When I moved to Silicon Valley, it was April 2014. I had $1,600 in my bank account and $30,000 in debt. And like, I was 24 with a computer science degree. That's not what you're supposed to be when you're 24. Like all your friends are like have high paying 6-figure jobs in tech companies. So my way of dealing with that was just like basically being poor until it worked. But that's uncomfortable too. But I believed that one day it would work. And I think if you lack that self-belief, then it manifests in laziness. But I don't think it's an inherent laziness. I think that is a miscategorization of the root problem.
I'd completely agree with you, because even when I built this podcast, for me, it was when I left my job, I had no safety net at all. There was no plan B. This plan A had to work. Otherwise, I am finished sort of thing. And yeah, you're right, man. It gives you a different type of drive because you know you have to succeed. There's no other option. There's no fallback net. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you something there quickly as well, right? So when you'd come to the realization that you'd be making 6 figures, you got all this money, you bought the cars and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
The lifestyle would come with it. When you had that sit down conversation with yourself and realize I've got enough to show for it, there's not much money there or anything, and you moved to you moved to San Francisco as well. Yeah. What did you do with everything you had? For example, the cars or any property you may have bought, anything like that?
So I didn't have properties. I had, at that point, I only had the BMW.
Yep.
And like, if you don't understand, wealth is basically inputs and outputs. The only reason that I would say anyone is wealthy is because the input of money coming into their life is greater than the output. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how big or small those numbers are. If your input's larger than your output, I think you're wealthy. Now, you could be like wealthy but not really living a very extraordinary life, and I think that's a different problem. But if you look at someone like Mike Tyson, made hundreds of millions, I think it actually exceeded $1 billion in his career, and then goes bankrupt. You can never out-earn your outputs if you're not aware of that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so for me, even though I was earning lots of money, my output was just greater. That's how I ended up with $30,000 in debt, even though I had been making all this money because I was traveling the world, I was buying cars, I was selling cars. I might buy a car for 20 grand, put $8 grand into fixing it up, and then it turns out now it's only worth 17 grand. Yeah. Sometimes that's not how it works with cars. So, and I was like, but it's cool. Like, I'm making money. It's all good. So I think you can't, making money and then turning that into a wealthy lifestyle are just two different skills. And I decided to learn the second one.
So in North Carolina, when you moved there, what was your, you'd go around to people saying, I've got this Kickstarter. Would you help me out or something like that? What was it? What was the business idea?
Yeah. When you were in South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina, yeah.
Which, clarify the question so I can.
So so you moved to South Carolina, yeah?
I moved to South Carolina when I was 6.
Is that where you went into meet up with everyone with $1,600?
That was in San Francisco.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting confused here.
No worries.
You've been all over the place. Yeah. So San Francisco, you moved there now.
Yeah.
And you're going around telling people that this is your Kickstarter, basically. Yeah. What was the business idea?
So initially I didn't have a business idea.
Yeah.
I think the traditional Silicon Valley path didn't appeal to me, which is Silicon Valley says hey, start a business, solve your own problem, or, something that you're passionate about, things like that. And that business advice I think is really misguided for most people. What I did is I said, I'm going to be really systematic about this. I'm just going to figure out what business has the highest likelihood of making me financially independent. I'm going to go build that. So if it's building a scheduling tool for plumbers, cool, that's what I'm going to do. If I don't care. I'm going to figure, I looked at funeral homes, I looked at farms. I was I'm very systematically looking for a few things. And the framework that I used was, I want the business to be in a market that is old and large, and has a change happening in the market that is causing the large old market to be at some sort of threat. Something is changing in the market, and they need a new solution. Because I think all great businesses are built on a change in the market. You look at all like Uber, Snapchat, Tinder, all these came because the App Store came out, and also made these mobile connected phones.
Things like Netflix.
Yep.
Blockbuster. Yeah.
Exactly. Broadband internet streaming, you can also do this that you couldn't do before. So we looked at markets that were old, large, being disrupted, had some change going on. And we looked at car dealerships. In the U.S., over $1 trillion of cars are sold in the U.S. every year. But it's rated the number one worst consumer experience in America. And what we saw is that every year, more and more people were trying to buy cars online, or wanting to. So like, there was a study that said the year before it was 35% roughly want to buy cars online. And then the year that we started the business, it was 48% customers said they would buy a car online if they could. So we're like, okay, there's a trend here. There are going to be other startups that pop up and sell cars online. This is like, there was a company, BP, now Carvana, publicly traded. Those were all starting and saying, we're going to kill the dealership. So you have dealerships at threat from a change in their environment. And we said, well, if we can solve their problem, it's a good business. And that's like the biggest, I think, distinction between what makes a successful business or not is often a successful business is solving a problem, and then the solution comes second. Whereas a lot of people want to start with a solution, and then they're like, oh, now what's the problem I can solve? And that doesn't build any real value. You solve problems, find a good problem, you find a good business. So we were in that phase of like, just, I say it was me. So I was figuring out all the problems. And along that way, I was also, I was cold DMing people. Like I cold DM'd this one founder who had just raised some money, and I was like trying to learn how she had raised money. And it turns out she thought it was like for a date, but I was like literally just trying to learn, like, how did you raise money from that investor? Like I was cold DMing people on LinkedIn. I would cold email them. I would go to the meetups, meetup.com, different startup events, and I would just show up and immerse myself. Over that, I met advisors. I met my co-founder, who eventually started the business with me. And I was just trying to get my foot in the door because I knew I was an outsider, and I was fine being that outsider trying to reach in because I knew eventually people would let me in.
So you basically started an online car. Was it an online car dealership, or was it a software to run on online car dealerships? So
our big distinction was, there are companies, everyone in Silicon Valley is going to think they're too smart for this. They're going to say car dealerships need to go. We're going to start an online car dealership and wipe out all the other car dealerships. And I looked at it and I said, well, car dealerships are the second largest lobbyists in the US. First is oil and gas. So they kind of own the laws, and it is illegal for car manufacturers to sell cars direct to consumers. They have to sell through car dealerships in the US.
Yeah, but arguably they've got their own car dealerships as well.
In the US, they don't. So in the US, let's say you're a Toyota dealership. The Toyota does not own that dealership. So the relationship is, the Toyota manufactures the car, and then the Toyota dealership, who is not owned by Toyota, buys the car from Toyota and then sells it themselves. So the only customer of the manufacturer, in this case Toyota, is the dealership. Yeah. And then the dealership sells it to the customer.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And that's the way it works in the US.
Yeah, so we got it. Well, we got both of them in the UK. So we will have a customer, which is the dealership.
Yep.
They buy from, let's just say, that BMW right there.
Yep.
That's owned by a group called Sytner.
Okay.
Right? Sytner are a customer of BMW. They get the cars from BMW. But then we've also got BMW Park Lane, which is owned by BMW directly, and people can buy their cars from there. So yeah, we got both in that sense.
Okay. Yeah, in the US, you have Tesla who sells direct, and they got into a bunch of lawsuits now. But generally, the OEM sells to the dealership sells to the customer. So I said, okay, if the dealership's going to be there, the dealership needs new technology. And dealerships in the US run on dot matrix printers, DOS terminals. Like, it is a crap experience. If you go into a dealership in the US before our software, your name would have to be typed an average of 8 times into different systems to sell you one car. The systems don't talk to each other. They're all messy. And so it takes, 4 or 6 hours to buy a car. People hate it. And so our aha moment was really, that's a big problem. And we talked to car dealerships and said, how are you solving this? And they didn't have good solutions. So we said, well, you need to go build something that will solve this problem. And that was like the core of the business. And we knew it would be a good business. It's a big problem with a lot of money at stake. And it's a big threat to the industry if they don't fix this.
So that's what you come up with. You built that. How long did it take you to build?
So we spent about 4 months in this ideation phase of testing markets, testing concepts. And this is like my number one advice to anyone who's in a 9-to-5, thinking about quitting to start a company. What I would recommend you do, and I'm biased because it's exactly what we did, but like, hey, it worked out okay. Mm-hmm. So like maybe think about this. We stayed in our 9-to-5s, and what we spent our weekends and afternoons doing is we were validating, is there a large problem in a large market that's not being solved today? So we spent about 4 months doing that. We checked out farms and nursing homes and all that. Once we landed on car dealerships have a big problem, we started calling car dealerships and saying, hey, if we solve this, would you pay? Once we got a few dealerships to say, yeah, if you build this, I'm in, I'm going to pay, we immediately quit our jobs. Because at that point, I wasn't jumping off the ledge saying, I hope I build this and people want it. I'm like, no, I've already talked to probably at that point.
Done the market research.
Done the market research. I've talked to people who will actually become my first customer. Mm-hmm. And they are saying, hey, if you build this, I will actually buy this from you. So I'm not taking a huge risk here.
Yeah.
And so I quit. And that was March 2015. Then we sold the business April 2021. So 6 years and 1 month.
So what was the model? Was it a one-time, so the customer, the dealership will buy it off you one time? Or was it a monthly subscription sort of thing? What was it exactly?
I learned my lesson from my first self-defense business. I will never, ever in my life do a one-time business again.
Yeah.
It's just not a good business model. There's a reason everything you own is a subscription basis now. So the business model started off, you will pay us a monthly fee for the software. And that started off at $1,000 a month. And over time grew to about $32,000 a year was the average. But we had customers paying $70,000, $80,000.
Damn, okay.
And it became from the online checkout at car dealerships to the whole end-to-end checkout system for a dealership. So you can start online, finish in store, start in store, finish online. Mm-hmm. And that business was moving about $4 billion of cars every year through it in the transaction process when we sold it. So it grew from my crappy 300 square foot apartment where we coded it with me and my co-founder Marty to being like a nationally recognized player that was used by half the OEMs.
Was it just that as the income, or was it other ways that you could make money through customers and other potential customers? For example, direct to consumer rather than doing it for dealerships. Yep. Was there another way you could sell directly to the person who wants the car?
We couldn't do that because it was very intentional that we wanted to be on the side of dealerships. And as soon as you start sort of like competing against the dealerships, you have a conflict of interest. Although we did look into it, and basically dealerships told us, if you start that, I will stop paying you. And that was really helpful because the way that we build the business is very systematic. Test it before you build it. Test it before you build it. So we asked the customers, can we build this? And they said, no. If you build that, we don't want it. So we said, okay, we won't build it then. Keep paying us. The long-term business model was to get that transactional volume, which is I talked about $4 billion a year, and start working with lenders that want car loans. And so they would pay us, call it 1% to 3% of the car sale, and still pay the dealership because you have to pay the dealership in that relationship. So about 6 months before we sold, we signed our first lender. That was one of the largest subprime lenders in the US, and they were going to pay us, I think it was 1.5% on every loan that closed through our platform, and then they would still pay the dealership. So they were paying us a marketing fee for like the technology and then pay the dealership. That was really important because we ultimately got bought by a public lending company. And the reason we went into that space, which again, I hope anyone listening is detecting a theme here, it was very systematic. I had a meeting with my six executives about 2 years before we sold, and I said, we need to position this business to be the most valuable business possible. What are the things that we can do to make this business valuable? And the number one thing we identified was, if we can find a way to make money on a per car sale basis from the lending arm, this business is far more valuable. So from that meeting, we started moving in that direction. And 6 months before we sold, I started something called the Manhattan Project, named after the nuclear bomb in America, where it was me and like the most important people in the company, and we'd meet twice a week and say, are we doing lending on the platform? Are we getting paid from lenders? If not, we need to make it happen ASAP. And who's owning that? And so every week we would meet twice, and within like 3 months, we went from this needs to happen to we signed a lender, and then other lenders started looking, and that's why we got bought by a lender ultimately.
Well, so when you started from day one of when you started this business or when you thought of that idea, did you make it your intention to sell it eventually?
Yes.
Okay. It was built to sell.
It was built to sell. Me and my co-founder went on a long walk one day before we started the business, and we said, what's our intention here? And we had a few things that we were really clear on from day one. One, we are not building the next Facebook. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley think they're building the next Facebook, and they're not going to. But when you try to build the next Facebook, you kind of either build the next Facebook or you go bankrupt. There's not a lot of in between there because you structure it differently. You're growing at a different pace. So we said, we're going for a triple here, not a home run. And for us, a triple was like, if we walk away personal net worth of at least $5 million, we're good. That was sort of when we were young guys, 24 years old, we were like, that's more money than we can ever imagine. So like, we're good.
Little did you know.
Yeah. And then, because I didn't have much money, I thought $5 million meant you're like flying private and like, driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And like, I didn't even know, frankly, what a $5 million net worth lifestyle looks like. If I had, I would have been like, oh, the number needs to be much higher. But at the time I was like, it's going to be crazy. And so we started the business with that very clear intention. And then we just said, when we get to the point where we think we can make that, let's not be stupid. Because you see a lot of horror stories where people, it's this hedonic treadmill where you get too caught up. I'll give you a really sad one. I was catching up with a friend, and he had a really close friend, so it's like a friend of a friend, but it's a true story, who entire net worth was Coinbase stock. And the Coinbase stock got crazy high, and he got, I want to say it was like $850 million personal net worth. And he didn't sell a dollar of it because he's like, I just want that billion. And he waited, and then it crashed. And now he's probably worth like 100 million or something, boo-hoo, he's doing okay. But like, it was just the ego of saying, but I want $1 billion.
Yeah.
Even though he would have been fine at 850.
It sounds like the same thing with crypto all day long. People lost, I say lost, they didn't take the opportunity when Bitcoin went to, I think it was near $70,000 or something like that, when it popped in maybe 2021, 22. There was always people saying, but I just want that $5,000 more or something like that. Next thing you know, all the way come crashing down. Yep. And they're left with whatever they were left with. Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing. It's just I think it's just natural human greed, basically, to want to think like that.
It is. There's a way to prevent it, which is actually if you were to sit down and think like, what is the optimal strategy to play on money games? What you would realize is that when you can take money off the table, that is actually what allows you to play riskier games. So for me now, if I wanted to go build Facebook, if I go give it my all for 5 years and the business completely fails, I'm fine. I've got a nest egg to fall back on. So it's not risky for me to do that. But if you're just starting out, it's very risky for you to go for $1 billion outcome or nothing. So you're better off, when you can, taking chips off the table so that you have a bigger net worth and asset base. That is actually what allows you to take bigger risks. So I think people get that wrong in that they're waiting for that big outcome, and you're better off sort of getting incremental wins that allow you to be riskier.
How did you manage your personal wealth? Because, previously when you had a business and you were making six figures, as you said, you were just spending six figures as well. Yep. So how did you manage your personal wealth and learn from the lessons last time and implement that into your business and your life going future from this point onwards? So when we sold the business for $110 million, something really funny happened. We announced the deal at $60 a share. 6 months later, it was a public company buying us, so you could see what they were worth. 6 months later, they had gone from $60 a share to over $400 a share. And so on paper, this isn't how it played out, unfortunately, because then the stock crashed. But on paper, it looked like we'd actually sold the business for close to $800 million because the stock had risen so much. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, anyone on the planet that manages money would talk to me. And so when I sold the business, I was very clear, I'm not going to screw this up and just lose it. And a lot of people make money
because they're good at making money, but they lose it by investing because they don't invest. So I went on a 6-month journey where I interviewed basically the 15 best wealth managers on the planet. There's these lists you can see. I mean, these guys are managing literally like billionaires' wealth. And I had all of them build custom portfolios for me, tell me what I should do, tell me what I shouldn't do. And after the end of talking to all 15 of them, seeing what they would recommend, what they wouldn't recommend, then I sat down and said, okay, based on this, I feel like I've learned a lot. I've read a bunch of books, and I started to put together a plan that I would actually implement. So the long story short is I didn't touch it for a while. I just learned. I think that was really critical. Now that I've done that, I know like how do the world's best investors invest? What do they do? Which is very different than I saw some of your. I commented on your stories.
Is it on which one?
It was like someone gives you $100,000. What are you doing? And you were like posting people's replies.
Oh yeah.
I said, geez, nothing what anyone's suggesting, because like that's not how real wealthy people invest.
Yeah. I want to come to that because I think that's definitely an interesting topic. But I just want to go back to basics because I want to give you an idea I've been having recently, right?
Sure.
Ali, our good friend, actually recommended me a book called Built to Sell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't read it yet, to be honest with you. But I know after the past year of speaking to people like yourself, people who've built businesses, scaled them, sold them, all that's on my head now is I don't want a small little business where I'm just selling to one consumer and that's it for the rest of my life sort of thing. I want to build a business or build some sort of software that I know I can exit for hundreds of millions. I'd love to. Even if it's 10, 15, 20 million. Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Because I can still live the life that I want to live. Anyway, so I thought of an idea of the game of in the world that we're living in, which is a full-on content mode. Yeah. I can't think of a system that basically systemizes everything to make sure your whole team are all aligned and synced up with one another. So to give you an example, this podcast we're recording, I'll make a software where the raw footage gets uploaded. It's all done pretty much seamlessly. This is my idea and plan. Raw footage gets uploaded. Editor takes it, or you have an automated AI system that edits it for you. Yeah. And then the next step from there is basically making a whole load of clips from it for social media. And then from there, having someone from your team make a thumbnail for it. So it all in step by step. Yep. It will plan out when the episode's due to go live, and also uses AI to give you suggested titles as well, off of what's been popular previously before on your channel and also amongst YouTube itself. Yep. And that way, systemizing everything, because I'll give you an example. The reason why I thought of this particular was because right now I've got 20 weeks of content backlogged. I don't know which one's coming out first. I don't know which one's coming out next. I don't know the titles. I don't know the thumbnails, nothing like that. But if I upload the files, maybe give a little description in the system, and it tells me, okay, cool, this is what this episode's called, this is the title of that, all that sort of stuff. But how do I even know how to test that market to see if it's big enough for anything?
Do you want to go deep on this? Because I can,
let's go.
I can go like, here's the actual masterclass on how to do this. I decided to
100%,
let's do it. So, first things first, the way that you build wealth, you've correctly identified, is through an exit. It's through equity value, and that's simply because of the math. If I sell you a service for $100 and my only reward for that is the $100 you pay me, that gets taxed. So at the end of the day, I'm left with like $55. Mm-hmm. If I sell you a product for $100 that is building equity value in a business, say a SaaS business, typical SaaS business exit might be 10x. So when I sell you a $100 product, my net worth is 100 times 10, $1,000. Yeah. That's already the cash flow business worth $55 in net worth, software business worth $1,000 in net worth. It's almost a 20x difference for the same fundamental action, which I've sold you a product for $100. So you've correctly identified that the way to get wealthy is building equity value. And software, there's other businesses, but like software has a pretty high, what is known as a revenue multiple. So the revenue that you get gets multiplied by a certain factor, and that's what your net worth is worth. There's also cool tax breaks. So when you sell a business, you're taxed differently. There's tax breaks for a certain amount. In the US, it's up to $10 million. It's tax-free. UK is a little different. So fundamentals are there. As far as your business goes, the way you want to evaluate natural business is...
By the way, I just want to say, if you think it's a shit idea and all that sort of stuff, I just want you to be completely honest.
We're going to roast it in a second.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's the next part. So business is actually 5 things. And I think people just complicate it too much. So first is your category. Category is it a coffee shop on the corner? Is it a software business? Is it an agency? Like, what is it? So you're in the software business. Second is your market. Your market is, in this case, podcasters.
Yeah, originally I thought about it through podcasters, but I thought, okay, maybe this could be applied to YouTube in general.
Okay.
But now I'm thinking maybe stick it at podcasters, because podcasters is always growing, especially the day and age we're living in right now as well.
Yep. Yeah, let's go podcasters, because I think you're going to end up getting into a sticky situation if you try to solve too many problems for too many markets, which we're going to roast in a second.
Yep.
So you have your podcasts are your market. Your market might be podcasters, but it turns out it's not actually podcasters, because a lot of podcasts are just filmed at their home by themselves with no team, no expenses. So your market is podcasters who are paying a team, it sounds like, or have some sort of production system. Like, I don't know, you probably know the stats.
Let me go more deep into it as well.
Yeah.
Because majority of the time I'm a solo creator. Yeah. So I want to create two packages or two subscription models, shall I say, where one's for team members, one's for a team production thing, and one's for solo. Yeah. So solo, you still need to upload files. I still want the AI to give me a title. I still want to know what sort of thumbnail to have based on what other people have had as well. So that was out there.
So do you know how many products Amazon sold when they first started?
No.
Do you know what they sold? Books.
Yeah. Oh, you say, okay, yeah, that's one product then, yeah.
One.
Yeah.
You get one product when you start a business.
Yeah.
You don't get to be the bookstore. And I mean, now Amazon sells servers and computers. Like, they sold books. Mm-hmm. So you need to start one business before you expand into a second business. When you're talking about two businesses, two problems, two solutions. So I think your one business is probably the you'd have to decide, is it solo creator or is it team member? But either way, it's one business, one product to start.
Well, so would you say there are two different products then?
Yeah, it's two different use cases. Because the thing is, if you try to please everybody, like, everyone kind of gets a lukewarm, like, it's okay. You want to have one market that you just crush it for. Yeah. And usually the way I would look at that is, so podcast is your market, and then you have a subset of the market, which is like, there's the podcasts that have massive production teams, and that's probably like the high end. You have what's usually known as what's called the mid-market. Mm-hmm. That would be your bread and butter. Maybe they have a couple team members, and then you have the long tail, which is your solo creators. Yeah. And you want to choose one of those, because the way that the solo creator that's produced one podcast produces a podcast relative to like a team of 30 people, very different. So I'd pick one. I think it's probably the mid-market, but here's the thing that you want to do is you want to see how many people are there actually that would buy this. So there's this huge fall off in podcasts. I just know this business a little bit, where the average person produces like if you produce like 5 episodes, you're ahead of 99% of podcasts, something crazy.
I think I saw Hormozy say this, if you make 21 episodes, you're already in the 1% of podcasting.
Yeah, there you go. So how many people are actually producing multiple podcasts versus someone who will buy your product, produce 2 episodes, and then cancel? That's not actually a good business. You need people who are continuing to produce podcasts regularly. So you'd have to identify literally what is the number of people that are producing podcasts that produce on a regular basis. And you literally need that number figure. And then you would multiply it by what you can charge them, which is going to give you sort of like, in Silicon Valley, we'd call it the total addressable market. Mm-hmm. And what you'd want in Silicon Valley, that number needs to be 2 billion if you want to raise venture capital. So it would be like, how many podcasts fit in this category times the dollar amount that you can charge on an annual basis. If it's not 2 billion, you can't raise venture capital. Yeah. I don't think you're trying to build a venture capital business, but you do need to understand how big is that market. And if there's only like $700,000 that you could charge if you got everybody in the market, then it's like, wow, that's probably not going to get to our goal of selling for $100 million. Because even if you crush it in a market, you're going to get 10, 20% of the market. So you can literally do the backwards math. Let's say you wanted to sell for $50 million. You said $50 million is my goal. Then you need to get your software business to $5 million in revenue, kind of like bare minimum. So to get to $5 million, you need to have a market that's worth at least $50 million, because you're going to get roughly 10% of the market if you win the game. So you could literally sit back and say, is this the right business, just based on the math? But assuming that's sort of like a tangent on like how to actually evaluate the size of the business. Once you have your market, which is podcasters, call it mid-market. Third thing you want to look at is the problem. And the biggest thing here, and you could tell me or not, but is this one of the top 3 problems of this person's world? Because one of the big problems we made early on in our business is we solved like problem number 7 on the dealership's list. And they'd like try it out. They'd think it's cool, but then they'd cancel because like it turns out everything else is on fire and like I just can't deal with this right now.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know the podcast game enough. Is production is project management the real issue, or is it the fact that editors are lazy, that they're flaky, or is it the fact that the algorithms are like really hard to deal with, or is it the fact that like podcasts are largely driven by guests, so actually it turns out guest curation? I don't know. But if it's not one of the top 3 problems for this market, I wouldn't build it. So that's sort of that. Then once you've identified category, software, market, podcasters, problem, let's just say it is this sort of, I don't know, call it production management process. And it should be one problem.
Yeah.
You should have mentioned a lot of features. It should be like one thing.
Okay, yeah.
Which maybe it's coordination between team members. Then you design your solution. And what you described to me earlier was a solution. I'd rather you say this is the problem, and then we have this very narrowly defined solution. The way you would figure out that's a good business or not is you would go talk to people in your market that have your problem, and you'd ask them, if I built this, would it solve it? That's what we were doing when we were in 9 to 5s before we quit. Once you say this will solve their problem, then the final decision is what's the business model. And to give you an idea, could be a one-off, which I don't recommend. Could be a monthly subscription. It could be we will take a percentage of your ad sponsorship revenue. Like there's all sorts of ways to build a business model. But you put all 5 of those together, which is category, market, problem, solution, and business model. Then you have a real defined business that you can actually say, is it good or not? So to roast your idea, I don't know if it's a top 3 problem. You would know. I don't know if the market's large enough. I would assume it's a little... There's a huge problem where most of your customers will end up canceling because they stop producing podcasts.
Yeah.
So I already don't like that because like there's just such a fall off there. And I don't know what you can charge for that. And I don't know if it's a big enough piece of the pie. So those are sort of like the questions that I'd be asking.
Yeah, my thought process was I want to go for the people who are already experienced in the podcast game, people who are, I don't want to say my level, but I mean like people who have been doing this for long enough and are actually sticking at it. So one of my very good friends also has a podcast and his backlog is like a year.
Yeah.
So his way more than mine. Another one of my friends also has a podcast. He's got a team. He's got a big backlog as well. So it's mainly for people who have backlog for almost team organization and coordination, as you said there as well, you know, making sure all these episodes are all aligned so you can kind of almost like a tracking system to see which ones have been edited, which ones clips are ready for, what's the titles, all that sort of stuff. As I mentioned there, and probably as you explained, the mid-tier where you've maybe got a couple of team members, not as opposed to 30 or something like that, or not necessarily the one who's doing it solo, because the solo person probably has it all in their head anyway. And they're probably not at the scale where they've got the backlog going and everything like that. So yeah, that was that basically. I thought,
let me give you a thought experiment. I just sort of like thought of that. Will help you sort of think about this business. You're a podcaster. That's what you do. I have 2 boxes here for you to open, and you can get what's inside. But it'll cost you $10,000, and you can choose which box you open. Box in my right hand will streamline your operations, get through your backlog really quick. You'll coordinate with team members, everything else. Box in my left hand, every podcast episode you publish will be on the YouTube homepage for 24 hours. Which box do you open?
that one.
For sure.
Yeah.
The point of that is this is a more painful problem. So this is already, I guarantee, not your number one problem in your business. So if you had to choose those two, optimizing, helping podcasts increase their reach, land in the algorithm, everything else, we have just sort of proven with this very simple thought experiment is a more valuable problem to solve. I don't know if there's, and whether or not you can solve it is sort of a different business deal, but like that's how I'd think about it.
So I was going to say this with YouTube algorithm. I don't think. I mean, so the thing that comes off the top of my head with that box right there is building a course or something like that, because I feel like with a course with my knowledge and skill set over the past 5 years, I can do that. Putting it into actual business model or a subscription model, I don't think is actually possible because it's all running on YouTube's algorithm. And I mean, unless you're building some sort of bot that is flooding with views, but then that's basically just illegal. But I think that one would basically be a course, which I'm planning to do, as I said, podcast course, because everything goes into it, SEO, titles, tags, thumbnails, all that sort of stuff. And if I can bring that to people, then we're off to the races, basically.
Could be, I mean, this gets more into like a different business model, but it could be you have a crack team of in-house agencies that like will craft the perfect title, thumbnail, and split test it until it ranks on the YouTube. So there's lots of different ways to solve it. My point in that exercise is not that you should go build this business, the YouTube homepage business. It's more like make sure it's a top 3 concern. Or else even you yourself just said you would buy this as a thing over your own business.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's why it needs to be top 3.
So let's come back to yourself, Brendan. Enough of my business plan.
This is fun.
I appreciate it. But look, so you've earned, let's just say you said 100 million altogether? Or was it each?
The business sold for 110 million. To be clear, we had investors, we had team members. A lot of my team members made 7 figures on that exit. So it'd be cool if all 110 was mine. It wasn't, but I have enough.
Still above a 7-figure mark easily then, right? So we were talking about investment there, and you mentioned that there's things that people aren't doing. That's not how actual top 1% investors do. So tell us, while you're here on the podcast right now, while I got your time, as people are making their money, what should they be doing with it?
So I would first very clearly understand what is investing for and what are wealth building activities. And it turns out investing is not a wealth building activity. Investing is a wealth compounding activity, and it's a wealth preservation activity. So there are like hedge funds, private equity funds, all these, the world's smartest quants, everybody is all sitting, they're sitting in a room, Citadel managing billions of dollars, BlackRock probably over $1 trillion now. All they do all day is sit around and say, how can we make more money from investing? And if you go look at the returns, some of them are making, if they're crushing, I mean, like your top 0.1% performer, maybe 13%, 15%, 18% annual returns. If you put $10,000 in the market and you compound it 15%, like 10 years later, you're not rich. You've probably got 30, 40 grand. So investing is not a wealth building vehicle. And you can just look at the returns of the world's greatest investors. Even Warren Buffett has gotten sort of like 15, 18% returns in his heyday. So that is not a wealth building vehicle. The wealth building vehicles are things that are in your direct control. Whenever you invest, you're investing in someone else's direct control. And that gets, again, these sort of, call it 8 to 15% returns. So wealth building is building businesses, building equity value, selling services, things like that. Once you have that, what you do want to start doing is start moving into investment. So what I would say is, even when you have, I don't know, not your first like $100 in your bank account, but like as you start making money, I would start investing in the stock market, solely because you want to start making mistakes. And it's a lot easier to make mistakes when you only are investing $100 than when you're investing 10 million or 20 million, because losing half of that really hurts. Losing half of your $100, you'll make it back tomorrow when you go to work again, like it's okay. As you start to build that, the way that I look at investing is, first and foremost, as I've said, I'm not trying to get wealthy from investing. Therefore, I'm trying to get, call it top 50% returns in various asset classes. The way I'd structure that early on is, if you're just starting out or managing, I'd say less than $100,000, you should be looking at owning pieces of businesses, which means buying stocks. You need to avoid what it's called home country bias. So if you're in the UK, don't have a portfolio that's 98% UK companies. If you're in the US, don't have it 98%.
Look global.
The way you want to look at it is, what is the GDP of various countries? And you want to own roughly that in proportion basis. So you don't want to own like outsized positions in any individual country. And the way that it ends up breaking down is you roughly want to own, on your equity portion public, 60 to 65% US, 35 to 40% global. So that's sort of like your equity. Equity is going to go up and down. The way that equity works is that equity delivers a higher return than bonds and treasuries from governments. But equity fluctuates and bonds don't. And so you want to add some bond exposure in that so that when the equities go down, the bonds go up and vice versa. And that's investing 101. How the world's 0.1% invest is very different. And I can cover that as well. But it is a different strategy that is not appropriate until you understand why a basic stock and bond portfolio works. And you're aware that it's not a wealth building vehicle. It's a wealth preservation and growth vehicle.
So as you said that, when you sold, you didn't touch the money until you had this sort of advice, until you knew what you're doing. Hadn't you gone and done the interviews with the top investors? Where do you think you'll be run out? What do you think your financial status would look like?
I think I'd be, if anything, probably more panicked. So we sold in 2021. Look at what the markets have done since then.
Yep.
Massive rises, massive crashes, massive rises, massive crashes. And I think the most important thing when you actually are managing serious wealth is understanding that it's your mindset more than your technical ability to invest that will actually kill or make you succeed, because you're going to sell high or sell low, buy high. You're going to freak out. So the number one thing I think I really learned from that is understanding. I'll give you a really good example. I was looking at our portfolio maybe 2 months ago, and I was like, it's doing too well.
It's doing too well.
Yeah, I was like, we're killing it. And mathematically, every 2 years there's a 10% correction. So, if to do the math, if you're managing $20 million and there's a 10% correction, you should lose $2 million.
Yeah.
Every 2 years, you should see a $2 million drop in your net worth. And I was looking at our portfolio and I was like, it's doing too well. It just kind of keeps going up. And I was like, I feel like we should lose some money soon. I don't want to, but mathematically, something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's just the way the statistics work, and I should be prepared for that. And I'm not I didn't make any changes to my portfolio. It's not like this is me saying I'm a market predictor, and so then I sold my equity and bought bonds. But then a week and a half later, stock market fell 10%. There's this, I don't know if you've followed it, but the yen trade unraveled in Japan, and that caused global equities to panic, and the stock market fell 10%. I wake up and I have this tracker that tracks all of my positions in real time, and we're down a ton. And rather than being oh my gosh, what's happened? I'm like, oh, cool, there it is. I thought this might happen soon. Cool.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's going to go back up. And I was looking back at it this morning, and we're almost back to where we were from a net worth, my personal net worth standpoint, maybe a month ago. We're a little below because the market hasn't recovered from that crash. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, cool, that's what markets do. And I think the biggest thing for me is once you learn how markets behave, how the global economy reacts to certain events, you can't predict what's going to happen, but you can predict what will likely statistically happen over a given long enough time period, and then you just don't freak out. And that allows you to actually stay the course and invest diligently. So that's half of it. The other half is I know a lot more about investing in private equity, real estate, how to structure a portfolio and things like that. So
I'm going to come to, because you just said there, the way the 0.1% people invest is completely different.
Completely different.
So I'm going to come to that in a second. But I want to get your take on this because you're quite a tech savvy guy.
Yep.
You've built and sold a business within tech. And then when it comes to investment and financials, what's your take on crypto?
Crypto is a classic solution looking for a problem, which is the worst way to build a business. The problem with crypto is Bitcoin was revolutionary. Bitcoin really was a new monetary system that was incredible. It got too popular and it rose too fast. As a result of that, easy money started entering the crypto space, which is why you see all these NFT projects and rug pulls and DAOs and everything else. And the whole space just sort of got so icky. Even FTX, the biggest exchange, turns out is a giant fraud.
Yeah.
And because the space got so just filled with scam artists, and it's anonymous, it's easy money, it's quick, it's polluted waters. And so when I look at it, I don't know any serious, I should say that most serious high net worth individuals I know are not seriously dabbling in crypto. You know, all of us have positions that are like 1 to 3% Bitcoin and maybe a little bit of Ethereum. But you know, they're not buying like all these like altcoins hoping to go up to 100%.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that drives me nuts about crypto and altcoins and all this stuff is, one, crypto is an unregulated space, which means that in the public markets, I can't go on a podcast like this and say, hey guys, like Boeing is the next big one. Buy Boeing today. I can't say that and then go buy a bunch of Boeing before this podcast comes out. I'll get in trouble. I like, there's financial rules around that. In crypto, I can do that. In crypto, I can go buy a terrible coin that has no value whatsoever for, you know, 1/1000th of a penny. I can go on my podcast and say, this is the next big thing. The day that podcast drops, I can watch it spike and then I can sell it the next day and no one will throw me in jail.
Yeah, there's a big celebrity who basically done this, comes off the top of my head. Elon Musk, Shiba Inu.
Elon Musk, yeah, with Inu coin.
Yeah. I think quite a few people have done it as well, to be fair.
Yeah, I have an interesting story about Elon Musk that I don't think I should say on record on this.
Really?
On his Bitcoin. But he's done pretty well in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
In the terms of billions of dollars. I have a friend who was a part of that. But, you know, I mean, look at, I don't know if you know CoffeeZilla.
Yep, yeah.
Actually, anyone listening to this podcast who wants to buy crypto, they should watch this whole podcast for good watch time, good click-through rates and everything else. After that, go watch some CoffeeZilla videos before you buy any altcoin. Just go watch that and you will see how this whole thing works, which is they buy a cheap coin, they hype it up on their podcast or on their platform, they sell it, and then leave you holding that coin that then crashes. And that is a very easy, repeatable format to make a lot of money really quick if you have a platform.
Especially if they have a cult following as well, going on podcasts saying it, that this X is the next best thing and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Their cult following is going to buy into it.
It's super easy. It's not even like, you don't even have to be that smart to do it. You just need a following.
Yeah.
So that is why you end up seeing a lot of crypto sort of pushed in this space. And if you just take a step back, watch some CoffeeZilla videos, see the scam for what it is, and don't even believe me, don't believe CoffeeZilla, even though he has a lot of evidence, look at actual historicals. When Bitcoin goes on a rally, all the altcoins do well.
Yep.
When Bitcoin falls 30%, the altcoins fall to zero.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they also fall 30%. So what that tells you is the actual only value in the space is Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum and a few other like sort of core projects. But the millions of side projects are just sort of hype machines that work during a rally and then immediately die off as soon as the rally is over, and then the next rally happens and there's new altcoins. You'll notice it's not the same altcoin every rally. It's always a different one. And if you don't have a platform and a podcast and a large place to promote your scam coins, then you're the one being scammed, not the one profiting alongside this. So.
But arguably at the same time, these altcoins can eventually become the mainstream coins. So, for example, once upon a time, Ethereum was an altcoin, I suppose. You know, things like XRP right now are still altcoin.
Yeah, I mean, and it deserves to be.
Oh, really? Okay. So
yeah, Ripple is like...
Do you know Ripple is such a funny one, because people are either so pro Ripple or so against Ripple. Like, I've never met someone who's in between the you know, whether if it does well, it does well. But,
I mean, I'm friends with the seed investors at Ripple who invested at like a $5 million valuation.
Yeah.
Personally made hundreds of millions of dollars off of that deal. The biggest problem with Ripple that they were facing when it blew up was like, how do we get our money out? Because all of a sudden Ripple was worth a lot of money, but they were like, but Ripple is not I mean, Ripple was supposed to be sending money from banks.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So like...
But people were still banking on that, I believe.
I don't know why. Like, that's like waiting for the... Elon Musk has his... the Roadster. They called it like the 2020 Roadster. And it's like, it's 2024 selling out. Like, sure, you can still be banking on your 2020 Roadster. I don't think Ripple's going to do the bank thing. The biggest problem for those investors was like, it's worth a ton of money now. They were sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars of personal net worth. How do we actually get it out without destroying Ripple from like a market perspective? I wouldn't... No this is the first conversation I've had that's seriously discussing Ripple in years. I'll say that. And I lived in Silicon Valley. I was friends with the investors and the very first investors in the company. I don't see it like it's an altcoin.
So tell me how the 0.1% invest.
So the 0.1% invest very differently than the average person. The average person, if they're investing in all, is buying some stocks and some bonds. The 0.1% invest across owning different asset classes. And the big difference is a typical regular investor will have, call it 60% global equities, 40% bonds. The 0.1% will often have 20 to 30% global equities. And what they're doing instead is they're investing in private equity and private real estate. The reason for this is that here's a really easy metaphor to give you. If I give you $100 and I say, go invest it, but I can take it back anytime I want. You only have so many moves that you can make. But if I give you $100 and say, I don't need it back for 10 years, go invest in things, go make it worth money and give it back to me in 10 years, you are able to make different moves. And so what the 0.1% are doing is it's called the illiquidity premium. They're investing in funds and other things where they do not expect to get their money back for 5-10 years, and that allows them to get market-beating returns. Often you're getting 15-18% returns versus 8% returns. So the biggest distinction is if you're investing as the 1%, you have to have your whole portfolio liquid. The 0.1% don't need liquidity in their portfolio, so they can tie up oftentimes 50 to 60% of their investment, and that will give them almost double the returns. They just can't pull it out whenever they want.
Yeah, but the thing is, with exactly the reason why it's 0.1% is because you have to work your way up to that level where you can afford to leave your money sitting there for a while and stuff like that.
Yeah. I would say that the thing that maybe... The other thing is these funds, there's two types of them. There's what's called, this is US-based, there's an accredited investor, which means you need to have $1 million net worth to invest in them. And then there's what's called a qualified purchaser, which is a $5 million net worth. These are restrictions put on by the government, basically so that the person that has $122,000 to their name doesn't go invest $122,000 in a fund that they can't touch for 10 years and then freak out. So it's to protect the investor from their own mistakes by having these different guardrails at different investment thresholds.
Makes sense.
So the 0.1% are investing in globally diversified things. They own businesses, and they're very clear that they are wealth preservation vehicles, and they make their money elsewhere. That's the big distinction.
What's your mission statement right now? I mean, you've sold your company. You're currently, as we mentioned in the very beginning, to be fair, I don't even know when this podcast actually started, but I mean, at some point at this table, you mentioned to me that, you're not actively working.
Yep.
However, you're living off investment income and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But I'm sure, how old are you again, sorry?
34.
I'm sure at 34 years old, I don't think a born entrepreneur like yourself, especially in the tech world, is ever done in terms of business, right? I feel like there's always going to come a point where you think, I'm going to start another company, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yep.
So what is your plan and what's your mission statement?
So when I grew up, I was poor, and it wasn't a mission statement. It was my primary question in life was, how do I make money? And I think that's a really good question when you don't have any money. So I spent most of my life figuring out how to make money. Once, when I sold the business for $110 million, literally overnight, all of my money problems went away. All my dreams, all my goals. I bought the Porsche 911, which was awesome. I bought all the stuff I wanted. And I was like, okay, I think I'm done with the money game. I had all these dreams, I had all these goals, and then I'm done. And that was really scary. It was well, now what? I'm 31. What do I do? Do I just sit around and think? Am I a philosopher now? What do I do? And so I really went back to the drawing board and said, well, what can I do that's going to fill the same needs that I felt building the business, but I don't want to just chase money. I was living in New York City, and I saw that chasing money is a hedonic treadmill that you never escape. There's always someone that has more. Even your Bill Gates. Bill Gates isn't the wealthiest person anymore. Now it's Elon Musk. In 5 years, it might be someone different. I wanted to get off that treadmill entirely. And so I said, what can I do that will allow me to feel my competitive drive? I like to win. I like putting in hard work. I believe that as a man, you need something that you're striving towards. but is disconnected from money. And I wake up every day feeling like it's important. I don't want to become the world's best like Tekken player because like, sure, it's a competitive drive and things like that, but like, does anyone really care at the end of the day?
It's not having an impact.
Yeah, when I'm hopefully 147 years old at my funeral and people are there like, he was really good at Tekken, who cares? So I'm like, I want to do something meaningful. And all this stuff I had learned that I had learned for like young Michia. How do you actually build wealth? How do you achieve financial freedom? How do you get out of this rat race that everybody's in? I just learned that for myself. And I was like, it'd be really meaningful if I could try to share that and help other people achieve it. I look at my life every day. It's a dream. Like I cannot express the level of gratitude that I have for my daily life, my surroundings, my wife, my friends, my family, everything is exactly as I ever dreamed. And I just want to help more people achieve that. And I want to do it without what I would consider as sort of the ickiness that you get into content. I don't have an ulterior agenda here. I don't need to, and I don't have anything wrong against courses. As I said, my first real business was a course, but I don't need to sell you a course because I don't need that income. So you can at least sit here, listen to me, and know that like everything is genuine. I'm not trying to like sell or shove anything. I just want to share the lessons that changed my life with other people. That's my mission. And if I can do that, I'm happy. And right now I'm really happy because I get lots of cool DMs and I can see it starting to take place. Like we're still very early. I plan to do this for the next decade, but I'm seeing people's lives change just by the stuff I'm doing. I'm like, dude, if I'm spending my time and money doing that, like I'm a happy guy.
And with this dream life you've created, what's been some of the biggest struggles you faced along the way? Some of the dark times that people wouldn't necessarily think or even be aware of when they get to that position?
The biggest problem with selling your company for $110 million at 31 is you very quickly achieve all of your life goals, but you don't solve a lot of your problems. You still wake up some days wondering what the heck you're doing with your life. You still feel unhappy or frustrated. Like these are sort of core root things that you need to work through, and money just can't fix them. So the biggest problem for me was like when I sold the company, I thought everything would be perfect. I'm never going to have to like struggle again. There's going to be no more hardship. And that's not how it works. The mind is still the same just because the bank account balance changed.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing for me was working through my mental journey on that, like trying to get my state of happiness, gratitude, all that I have now. That was a 3-year journey. And then the other thing is, I'm super happily married. But if I was to spend all day on Tinder, even if I was in the same relationship, I bet I'd be less happy because I'm looking at all these other choices. Mm-hmm. And that's just like, whenever you are, when you have a limited selection of choices, you actually tend to be happier in life. When you can make any choice you want in the world, that paradox of choice often leads to less happiness. I'm very happily married. I don't have Tinder or anything else. Good there. But when it comes to my lifestyle decisions, I can live on any city in the planet. I can buy any car I want. Can't buy any home I want, but I can buy a lot of them. And so how do I decide what is the right city, home, car to drive, like all these different things? And it's because you can do it all. It's like, oh, how do I know if it's the right choice? So I spent the last 2 years testing out different cities. We've lived in a bunch of different cities around the world. Now we're making this bet on Tokyo. But we're making the bet on Tokyo with the intention of making it a 5-year bet, not a 3-month bet. Because if we just go to try it out for 3 months, I'll be like, well, maybe there's something better. But if I go for 5 years, I think it cuts off my options.
You've been to Tokyo before, right?
Yeah, I've been to Tokyo a few times.
Okay, yeah.
But this is like if I go for 5 years, I'm actually reducing my freedom in a way that cuts off my choices, because I actually believe in some things. Going from many choices to one, where you live, marriage, all that actually makes you happier. So that's like a weird, you work so hard to get freedom, and then you actually learn that sometimes limiting your freedom is better for your happiness.
I want to suggest a place, and at this point, from the audience perspective, I'm going to actually sound like an ambassador for the UAE. I'm going to sound like an ambassador.
Dubai.
Yeah. What about Dubai?
I have never been to Dubai, and so I'm very hesitant to judge places I've never been to. I think everyone needs to experience things firsthand. But whenever you say but, it means that whatever you just said doesn't matter. One, I think Dubai does not have a real community. I think people often from Europe are moving there to make money and then will leave after they've made their money, because when you're in your earning time in life, you're not paying taxes. And all the people that I know that have moved to Dubai, I know a lot of them, I ask them, what do they love? Why did they go there? And no one, especially when I say, why did you move to Dubai? I've never heard anything but taxes. And that to me is...
You've never heard anything about taxes?
Anything but taxes.
Oh, anything but taxes.
So if I ask them, why did you move to Dubai? The answer every time is taxes. And then they'll mention other things. But I'm moving to Tokyo and my taxes will go up. So if you ask me why I was moving to Tokyo, I would never say taxes, because I'm actually paying more to live in Tokyo. I think there's a weird incentive where you're moving there for taxes and you will accept a bunch of the things that are suboptimal, like the fact that I assume right now if we were doing this in Dubai, we'd be roasting to death basically, although we'd have nice AC. But there's when the answer is taxes from everybody, it just makes you think like, this isn't it. I'm not moving somewhere for taxes is actually the equivalent of someone paying you to go live somewhere. Just thinking about it a little differently.
Am I right in saying that your US tax follows you everywhere you go?
It does.
How does that work? Because I remember I was speaking to, I had a podcast with a chap named Umar Ashraf, and he was telling me that taxes follow him everywhere, even if you go to Dubai. I was like, what? Huh?
I pay enormous amounts of taxes every year to the US, despite receiving none of their benefits, none of their, like, I received them earlier, but like now I'm still paying US taxes. If I live in Tokyo for the next 100 years of my life, I will still pay federal taxes to the US government every year, and also taxes in Japan.
I don't understand that. How?
It's just the way the US works. It is.
What's the tax rate? What's the percentage, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm paying federal taxes, so I don't pay state taxes, which you would pay if I was living like New York.
So federal tax is the thing that follows you everywhere.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's on capital gains up to 20%.
Yep.
And then on the income brackets, I think it's like 43% at the highest end. So your income from your investments, does that fall under the income bracket? Depends. So this is one thing that the 0.1% do differently. I would say like the average investor just thinks about overall returns. Good investors, not even the 0.1%, good investors also take into account after tax returns. Because if I have a fund that pays me an ordinary income tax versus another fund that pays me a dividend distribution, that's what's known as a qualified dividend. This qualified dividend is taxed at half the rate of an ordinary income distribution. So my income is structured in a way where some of it's qualified dividends, some of it is regular income, some of it's capital gains. It's sort of different styles, but it's all taxed.
It sounds like you always constantly need, even if you spend the next 100 years in Japan, it sounds like you always need a USA-based accountant.
Yes. When you get to investing the way I do, where you're not earning through a regular job, I actually pay taxes quarterly. So my Q3 taxes are coming up due. Every quarter, my team has to run through all of my investments, all of my income, and say, how much did he make in the last 90 days? And then write a check to the government. And what you do is you actually overpay the government every 90 days. And then a year from now, when we have all the figures, we'll go to the government and say, okay, we think we overpaid you by 47 grand. Give us a check back. And they write you a check back for what you overpaid them. And you do that every year.
That's mental.
And then I also have an accountant in Japan that's paying Japanese taxes.
And there's no way to come off the federal tax system.
You have to give up your U.S. passport,
your
U.S. citizenship. When you do that, you pay an exit tax. So they basically just cut your wealth in half from day one. So if you have 20, you walk out with 10. It's a little different, but that's roughly the math. So what they're basically saying is, fine, we won't tax you every year. We will tax you all at once.
For your whole wealth.
For your whole life.
That's mental.
That's the only way it works.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, we thought about giving up the U.S. citizenship, even though it would cut us in half, just because it's a better deal. But there's something, I'll say this, as someone who's lived in London now for a little over a year, but I've met a lot of very successful entrepreneurs in London. I'm in the circles here. I hang out with all the founders. America gets making money better than anywhere else in the world.
Hey, what do you mean?
Like, America knows how to do entrepreneurship in ways that the Europe does not.
Yeah,
and the European founders can admit this because the exits are smaller, the investments are smaller. There's a level of ambition in Europe that is significantly lower than in the US. And so for future generations like my children and things like that, if I want them to be in the land of opportunity, yes, America's going through a bit of a rough time now, but I do want them to probably be in America. And if I give up citizenship, like I cut off not only my access to America, but all future generations. So it's not a trade-off I want to make.
Yeah, it's funny because if few entrepreneurs I know recently from London or UK in general have been moving to America. One of my, I'd like to call him a friend, he owns a company called Manor Devore, Reese Barra. He's moving to New York City. Yeah. There's another guy, George Heaton, he owns a company called Represent. Moves to California.
Yep.
There's a lot of people doing it.
Yeah, and if you look, New York City, LA, two of the highest tax rates you will pay in the US. Like New York City and California are almost mathematically 30% higher tax rates than just like living in Miami.
Yeah.
They're moving there because there's the opportunity. And I think there's a lesson there, which is I don't think it's wise to make moves based on saving money. On the come up, you want to be making moves based on your earning potential and like your network and things like that. America's where it's at.
I definitely need to pay a visit.
You gotta go. You will see like just, especially if you get around entrepreneurs in New York, Silicon Valley, LA less so. The level of ambition they have is different than what you encounter here in London.
Yeah, fair as well. Well, for people watching this podcast right now, what do you want to say to them? Or forget the people actually, because me and you have been having a natural conversation anyway. So what would be your message to me? As someone who, I already told you my potential business idea.
Yeah.
You know, I've got the same vision of buying an R34.
Yeah.
You know, all of that sort of stuff, the lifestyle, etc. You've done it, you've been there. What would you advise me?
It's a big question. I think the thing that will separate you on this journey from wanting to be successful to actually succeeding is not the tactical know-how. I know the tactical ways to get a six-pack, but I still don't have one. It's not my tactical know-how. And it's generally not what stops people. It's their own mindset and ability to execute on that mindset. So for you, the thing that will happen over and over as you start out on your business is this creeping fear that what if it doesn't work out? What if I do those late nights, those weekend hours, risk it all, and in just 5 years from now, it just doesn't work out? And you have to push through those and do the work, also knowing that statistically speaking, it won't work out. Like that's the game you're playing. The odds are against you, but if you have enough at bats, eventually it will work out. And just really deeply believing that is very hard. It's one thing for me to say on a podcast. It's another thing for you to be on this journey, maybe 5 years from now, your idea doesn't pan out, customers cancel, and you just keep pushing. That's really hard to do. And that is what will actually make you successful. And I guarantee there is no podcast guest that can teach you that. There's no course, book, anything that can like instill that in you. You just have to feel it deep down. And I wish I could be like, here it is, like here's the pill, but like you just got to internalize that. And once you do that, then you can you will be more successful than anyone else. But like that's the secret.
Sweet as, man. I appreciate the message, man. I appreciate that. And if people want to find you, where can they do so?
I'm on, my last name's hard to pronounce, so I'm Ask Michia on probably every social platform.
What is your last name?
It's Rohrssen. It's German. So
Rohrssen.
Rohrssen. Rohrssen.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad, but when you combine it with a name like Michia, which is also spelled funny, it's a little hard to find me.
Yeah.
I'm Ask Michia on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, but don't DM me on LinkedIn. Stick to Instagram or YouTube, and that's why I make content. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I've got a thing called the CEO Hub, which I'm launching soon.
Yep.
Would you be down to do maybe half an hour live webinar for people who are watching this podcast right now want to join in?
Yeah, I'd be down.
I'm sure we can sort something out.
Gotta get some time zones. I might be in Tokyo or
Taipei. Yeah. I don't know.
How long does it take us to do this one? Like,
yeah, I know.
We're talking about like 6 months.
Yeah, literally. Well, hopefully we can arrange something, man.
Yeah.
But no, Michia, I want to thank you very, very much for this opportunity and coming on the podcast. I know, like as you just said, we've been trying to do this for months.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we can finally just sit down and get it cracking. And you know what? Be honestly speaking, I think this has probably been one of the easiest going podcasts that I've done in terms of just chilling out and just having a conversation with someone. And I know I said it in the beginning that you forget about the cameras, but I think I did.
Yeah, same.
I don't even know if these are recording or not.
I was like, we never checked, so I hope they're recording.
Literally, bro. But I want to appreciate you for your time, man. And guys, if you enjoyed what you saw and you like the conversations, like the one you just heard today, then make sure you subscribe and like the video, share it with people, share it with your friends and family so they can get the same value that Michia just dropped, and subscribe. Peace.